How often do we get the opportunity to walk through the corridors of history? Walk where the kings of the Pallava, the Chola and the Vijayanagar kingdoms walked, worshipped and ruled. If you have this urge, then start up your car and drive down south, past the town of Chengalpet, and you will reach this village, Uttarameru, a small but ancient village near Chennai.
உத்தரமேரூர் என்று இக்காலத்தில் அழைக்கப்படும் ஊர் பழைய காலங்களில் சதுர்வேத மங்கலம் என்று அழைக்கப்பட்ட ஊராகும். இவ்வூரில் 4 வேதங்களும் தெரிந்த 1000 பேர் வாழ்ந்ததாக சொல்வார்கள். இவ்வூரில் வாஸ்து சாஸ்திரப்படி திருக்கோயில்கள் அமையப்பெற்றுள்ளன.
Once a quiet Brahmin settlement, the village transformed in the year 750 AD when the Pallava king Nandivarman II gifted the village to a group of 1,200 Vedic scholars. At Uttaramerur, the ancient science of architecture or the Agama Shastra has been applied in great detail. The village mandapa or village hall is located at the center of the village with several temples oriented using this as a reference point. As per the ancient science of the Agamas, the village has to have 3 important temples: a Vishnu temple, a Subramanya temple or a temple for one of the sons of Shiva, and a temple dedicated to Lord Shiva. The placement of these temples ensures the flow of positive energy throughout the village.
In this inscription, there is a mention of a Shaivite mutt, which is not in existence now, but this shows that up to 17th century this village Uttarameru Chaturvedi Mangalam was in a flourishing stage.
The village gained repute and fame till this balance was disturbed. The Kailashnatha temple, located on the north side of the village, became a victim to the ravages of time and the neglect of man. Vegetation took hold in the brick and mortar sikhara or the temple tower. The roots slowly penetrated the mud and mortar masonry. The sikhara was split with major deep cracks. The vertical cracks extended to the base of the temple on all 4 sides. The masonry of the outer wall was collapsing at several places. The local villagers tried in vain to render small measures of repairs, but they proved to be ineffective against the onslaught of vegetation, the prime enemy of all ancient structures. The original structure had used wooden rafters for supporting the Pradakshina Patha, or the small passage that goes around the deity. Moisture and seepage had caused these rafters to rot, and most of them were missing. This seriously affected the structure of the temple and exposed the brick-laid roof. All was not bad. The foundation to the sanctum was built with stone blocks with moulding. The inner core formed by this foundation was filled with boulders. In spite of the cracks in the brickworks penetrating into the stone masonry, the foundation was relatively intact. In the front of the temple, the stone mandapa had collapsed due to the repeated laying of weathering courses over the roof slabs. This additional weight had displaced the pillars. The main beam was broken and the roof slabs had fallen down. In all this destruction, we sometimes fail to see the ingenuity of our ancient builders. In spite of the falling pillars and the masonry, the main deity, Lord Shiva, represented in a majestic lingam, was untouched and safe. The design and angle of construction ensured that masonry would fall only to the side of the temple, but never into the center where the deity is placed. The Agama Shastra is a manual for the assimilation of natural energy and forces for the benefit of the village. By the destruction of the Kailashnatha temple, the energy balance had now been disturbed. The beneficial energy was depleted. Over the years, the village became another ancient site, and the energy that made it special dissipated. The villagers realized this, and the elders now wanted to restore the energy back. This could be done only if the Kailashnatha temple was restored. The initial reaction a few years back was to demolish the ancient temple site and rebuild a new temple. The very thought of demolition of the old and comfortable monument was impossible to accept. Sentimentally, many felt that the ancient bricks had absorbed the energy released from 1,000 years of the Vedic chanting and the singing of religious songs like the Tevaram by the citizens of the village. By demolishing this temple, this Vedic energy imbibed in the bricks would be lost and would further disturb the Agama forces of the village. So, the villagers were looking outside for a solution. The search brought the elders of the village to Madras, or Chennai as it is known today. Here, they met a group of archaeologists with years of experience in restoration and conservation. The archaeologists were working through an organization called Rural Education and Conservation of Heritage Foundation, REACH. The REACH team would be led by Dr. T. Satyamurthy, former Director of Archaeology, Government of Kerala, and Superintending Archaeologist, Archaeological Survey of India. Nothing was left to chance. Comprehensive photographic documentation for every stage of the work was made before, during, and after the work was executed. The stucco images were individually photographed. A comprehensive video documentation of the work at every stage was carried out.
So our challenge is to do how to preserve it without being pulled down. So we are going to do in such a way using the same material available here and also not to lose its original characteristics. That is a very important task behind us.
Dr. Satyamurthy felt the bricks used in the ancient monument were strong and still had the capacity to support the structure for many centuries to come. The structure had been weakened by the cracks, and yet they had withstood the onslaught of nature and long neglect. So, why should it be demolished? The solution would be to study and stitch the cracks. If this was done scientifically, the temple could be restored and provide spiritual guidance for years to come. REACH undertook a comprehensive inspection of the monument in order to chart the course of conservation measures with the sole aim of preserving the original fabric of the temple. The first look inside was daunting. The sanctum was infested with bats. On the outside, a large anthill had grown that soon became home to snakes. Having completed the study of the structure, the team entered the site. The first important job was to relieve the main temple from the weight of the front mandapa. This was a structure from a later period. It was constructed around the 16th century by the kings of the Vijayanagara period. The foundation of this mandapa was weak and exercised great stress on the original structure. The outside mandapa was documented. Every block was numbered, coded, and the stone members were dismantled. The blocks were carefully stored for reconstruction. Initially, the line drawings of the mandapa and a general plan of the temple was prepared. This plan was a blueprint for the reconstruction and restoration works. When the mandapa was removed, the archaeologists discovered a new treasure: inscriptions left behind by the Chora kings. These precious inscriptions had been covered up by the construction of the mandapa in the Vijayanagara period. The archaeologists went to work, deciphering the inscriptions that gave further evidence on the history of this important monument.
This belongs to the period of Rajendra Chola. In this inscription, Rajendra Chola was the son of Rajaraja the Great. In this inscription, the name of the temple is mentioned as Sri Kailashnatha Periya Koyil. And in this same inscription by Rajendra Chola, it is mentioned that the Sri Kailashnatha Periya Koyil, that is, this temple is situated on the southern side of the Bhumiswaram. So, the temple mentioned in this inscription, that is the inscription of Aditya Chola, as Bhumiswaram may be different from this temple. That Bhumiswaram might have been situated on the northern side of this temple. So, this inscription deals with some land grants by Rajendra Chola.
Before starting work on the main temple, the team decided to isolate the outer wall from the inner wall by removing the connecting rafters. This reduced the weight on the outer wall and left them freestanding. Walking around the temple, we see that the stone masonry work supporting the main temple had vertical cracks. It was decided that the masonry had to be first stitched and strengthened. To execute this work, Dr. Satyamurthy approached Dr. Matthews and Anu Padma of IIT Madras. Dr. Matthews studied the cracks and came up with a unique solution. The solution would not disturb the stone blocks. Now, having evolved a solution, Dr. Matthews conducted many trials of the technique in the structural labs of IIT Madras. The trials were done on similar granite blocks. The stitched blocks were subjected to stress tests, and the joints held.
Most of the important monuments in South India are made out of granite. So, it is a very important material for studying in for monuments for South India, for repairing. Whereas if you go to North India, more Rajasthan, Gujarat, Delhi, most of the monuments are made in sandstone. So, we have to do an extensive study of both the behavior of both sandstones and granite. This is only an initial study, and further study has to be carried out so that we can develop design charts and recommend exactly the diameter, the angle and the length of the rods and the various fixing conditions.
Having validated the technique, Anu Padma was sent to work on the ancient monument. Dr. Matthews decided to drill narrow holes through two adjoining blocks. The holes would be at an angle. A compound was injected in the gap to firmly grout the pins. Into these holes he would introduce special stainless steel or SS pins. The exposed holes were then covered with granite powder to maintain the stone look without exposing the work done. The work was slow and difficult, and over days the structure was made as good as new. The technique was so effective that the ancient builder may walk by the foundation and not realize the work had been done.
One of the important aspects we looked into in a scientific manner is the correlation of the study of stitching in the lab with the performance at the site. Now, it is very important in all scientific studies that the method we are planning to adopt be tested and evaluated in the laboratory before they are implemented in the site. One of the successful aspects of this project is the similar granite stones were taken and similarly the cracks were simulated in the laboratory. Then the holes were drilled and stitched with stainless steel rods. They were subjected to shear loading and flexural loading and evaluated for their performance and compared to the performance of uncracked stones.
The final finish to the stone masonry strengthening process was to clean and pump specially formulated grouting compound into the larger cracks so that they would not be exposed and subjected to further damage. Standing back from the monument, now Dr. Satyamurthy took a deep breath. He had completed the first critical step. The foundation was now secure. The restoration team went climbing to the top of the temple. The vegetation on the entire monument was removed. The deep-seated roots were treated with special chemicals to prevent them from growing again. This exposed the superstructure, and the team was able to study the damage done. Having secured the stone masonry, the team began work on the brickworks that made up the inner and outer walls of the temple. The logical system was to work upwards from the bottom. Working with care, the team performed different types of repairs to the main structure. Where the damage was extensive, portions were removed after documentation and rebuilt while maintaining the original design. Several cracks were filled and grouted. The artisans needed very special skills to be able to dismantle and then refit the stones without leaving a gap. We must remember that the works were being carried out using the original materials, and very little new materials were used. That was the challenge, and that was where Dr. Satyamurthy and his team applied years of experience and knowledge. Loose areas were bound and stitched with stone slabs bound with lime mortar. The wide cracks had to be filled with binding and stitching materials. Instead of using metal plates, Dr. Satyamurthy decided to use cut granite slabs of the required thickness. After the slabs were inserted, Dr. Satyamurthy left the slab in place to observe if the weight of the slabs would further damage the structure. After observing the repairs for 12 weeks, Dr. Satyamurthy decided that the structure was safe, and he proceeded to complete the repair works. The slab was inserted and covered with the traditional type of lime mortar. Lime mortar was used for construction of most of the ancient temples in Tamil Nadu. Lime mortar takes a while to cure, but once it is cured, it will bind and hold for centuries. Lime mortar making is an art that has almost vanished with the advent of cement. Dr. Satyamurthy decided to use lime mortar prepared in the traditional manner. Organic lime was mixed with sand, jaggery or unrefined sugar, and kadukkai, which is a herbaceous plant extract. Once the mixture attains a consistency of paste, the mixture is left to ferment for 15 days. This formula was established and used for centuries all over India. The lime mortar prepared was in two consistencies. The rough consistency was prepared with a machine. This was primarily used for the construction work and to bind the bricks. The second consistency was hand ground to a very fine paste. Here, the consistency was smooth like soft butter. The softer lime mortar was to plaster the outer surface of the structure to finally give a smooth, golden look. A new layer of fresh lime plaster, prepared in the traditional methods, was applied over the brick portion. Seeing the temple now is like having seen a magician's performance. A monument that was in ruins a few months ago now looks as good as new. As the monument took shape, the focus changed from repair to decoration. The temple had many stucco figures decorating the outside of the vimana or superstructure. These stucco figures played a part in decoration and also in the agama science or shastra. The figures spiritually protected the structure and enhanced its power. The art of making stucco figures is practiced by traditional sthapatis or artisans. The sthapatis belong to families who have practiced this art for hundreds of years. The sthapatis study the shapes, size, features, and look at each stucco figure. Studying the documented images of the old figures, the artisans go to work, slowly molding and bringing the figures back to life. Wherever figures were missing, new replicas were made based on the original design. This work also gave opportunity to several new artists to observe, learn and try their hand at building these figures. As the artisans worked, they restored not only the embellishment of the monument but also its spiritual powers. Historically, it is seen that the art of stucco figures was refined during the Nayaka and Vijayanagara periods. During the Pallava and Chora period, the figures were used in a limited manner. This is seen in this monument, where most of the existing stucco figures are from the Vijayanagara period. As the Vimana, or the superstructure, is being restored, we are struck by the design used by the ancient builders. The tower is designed to be hollow. This maintains a column of air trapped by porous materials like bricks and lime mortar. A false ceiling of wooden beams acts as a barrier from heat, provides additional support to the tower, and also prevents the infestation of bats inside the dark hollow of the tower. The resulting effect is that the interior of the temple will stay cool and pleasant even on the hottest day. Dr. Satyamurthy has undertaken the role of being an archaeologist, an engineer, a traditional scholar of the Agama science, and a builder. Now, how does he don these various hats with ease?
In this aspect, I have to consult many people. Many people came to our help. Mainly, there is, as I told you, IIT came for stability, and secondly, Sthapatis, I have to interact with them and get the things done as per the original, and became successful because of the cooperation of all types of people. First the local villagers, then the technical modern techniques and technicians, and also the ancient Sthapatis who were with us all these days, all these rather more than 2 years to rebuild it. Even though it was little delayed, now we are sure and we are also very happy this temple will bear many more hundreds of years. It will bear the shocks. That's what we hope. Now it is more than 1 year it was left to see the natural calamities like rain and other things, and it is sustaining. I hope this will be very much helpful to the villagers. It will bring back the glory of this great Uttaramerur. Which the history of the temple has come back with this renovation, and these 2 steps which you are seeing all sides, they were not buried during the Vijayanagara period. We have brought back these 2 balustered temple steps which were original in Pallava time. So the villagers and the entire community should be very proud of this temple to be back in its original shape.
Finally, the outer walls are finished and the brick ceiling is replaced with a ceiling made up of stone slabs. The temple is now closed and secured. Cool and dry, the passage is ready for the devotee to circumambulate the deity. The small opening into the inner chamber takes us to the large Shivalingam, looking majestic, inspiring faith and devotion today as it inspired people generations ago.
சிவனுடைய ரூபங்களை கூறும் பொழுது 3 விதமான ரூபங்கள், அந்த ரூபங்களை வைத்து எந்த காலத்தை சார்ந்த லிங்கம் என்பதை நாம் கண்டுபிடித்து விட முடியும். குக்குடாண்டம் என்று சொல்லக்கூடிய கோழி முட்டை அளவிலான கூர்மையாக இருக்கக்கூடிய ஒரு சிவலிங்கம், வெள்ளரிப்பழம் என்று சொல்லக்கூடிய தட்டையாக இருக்கக்கூடிய ஒரு வடிவம், சதுரசம் என்று சொல்லக்கூடிய சதுரமாக இருக்கக்கூடிய 3 வடிவம். இதிலே மிகவும் பழமையானது என்று சொல்லப்படக்கூடியது இந்த வெள்ளரிப்பழம் என்று சொல்லக்கூடிய ரூபமாக இருக்கக்கூடிய மூர்த்தி தான். அந்த மூர்த்தி தான் இப்பொழுது நாம் இங்கே பூஜித்து வருகின்ற இந்த கைலாசநாத சுவாமி ஆலயம்.
The Shivalingam in this Kailashnatha temple is unique. The marking on this deity show that the lingam personifies Shiva and Parvati, his consort. This represents the male and female aspects of the Lord. This type of representation was only done in the Pallava period, when the temples never had a separate sanctum for Shakti or Parvati. As the temple comes back to life, it is difficult not to see the voluminous records made on stone. The entire temple has history written in stone. Most of the inscriptions are of the Chora period, some of them making direct reference to the great Chora king Rajaraja Chora. Most of the inscriptions relate to the donations made to the temple for its upkeep and maintenance. One unique feature is the inscription relating to the measurement, units and scale used to design the temple. This can be found on the southern side of the temple.
Inscriptions, the purpose of inscribing or engraving the matter is to record land grants and such grants to the temples. Their aim was not to record the historical events, but as a byproduct we get, historians get all such happenings in the in history. For example, there will be eulogy of the kings. In this inscription, this inscription starts with the eulogy of King Rajendra Chola the Great. Thirumanni Valara Irnilamadandayum Porchayapavayum Sirthani Chelviyum. That particular eulogy mentions many of the heroic exploits of Rajendra Chola. For example, his Gangetic expedition. Tangada Saral Vangala Desamum Servichinavi Irubaturgal Arasagalagata Parasuraman Mevarum Santima Tivaran Kardi Irithia Sembun Tirthagamudiyum, such historical events. Later on, that particular inscription deals with the land grants. So, we will come to know about all the names of the lands, names of the plots, names of tanks and other such things, even streets. These are all recorded in this inscription. Though the aim of the purpose of the inscription is not to give details to the posterity, they are basically registered documents. Land grants and other such grants are registered to as a title deed. It is registered. The title holder is the temple.
With the outside of the temple taking shape, the team is focused on cleaning up and restoring the insides of the temple. Several unique engineering features are seen. To a normal observer, the details will go unnoticed. The door jambs and the pillars are all connected by large and heavy slabs of stone. These slabs act as tie rods and increase the structural integrity of the temple. The pillars are finished and semi-finished. Some of them have detailed carvings and others are empty. In those days, the artisan was given the opportunity to display his skill by working on the pillars as his personal canvas. In this temple, we can see many designs and figures made to embellish the pillars, and also pay tribute to great poets and philosophers of the time. Nandi, the celestial vehicle of Shiva, is brought back to his high pedestal facing the Lord, waiting and ready to fulfill all the wishes of the Lord.
As an archaeological conservation officer, we don't give scope for emotions. But here I don't know, somehow I am very emotional to see this work could be done with the participation of only the voluntary agencies like Creech and local villagers, and also our Professor Matthew, who came to our rescue and solved this problem. So it is a very happy, rather a very emotional moment for even archaeologists like me.
As the project comes to an end, Dr. Satyamurthy hands over the temple back to the villagers. The work of the archaeologist is done. The remaining work of building a compound wall, installing the kumbhams or celestial pots on top of the vimana, and invite Lord Shiva with pujas and rituals to once again occupy his home and rule over the fortunes of the village.
பொறுப்பிடையான் நெருப்பிடையான் காற்றின் உள்ளான் கனத்தகத்தான் கைலாயத்து உச்சியுள்ளான் காலத்தியான் அவன் என் கண்ணுளானே மனத்தகத்தான் தலைமேலான் வாக்கின் உள்ளான் வாயார தன்னடியே பாடும் தொண்டரு இனத்தகத்தான் இமயவரம் சிரத்தின் மேலான் ஏழண்டத்து அப்பாலான் இப்பால் செம்பொன் புனத்தகத்தான் நறுங்கொன்றை போதின் உள்ள பொறுப்பிடையான் நெருப்பிடையான் காற்றின் உள்ளான் கனத்தகத்தான் கைலாயத்து உச்சியுள்ளான் கைலாயத்து உச்சியுள்ளான் காலத்தியான் அவன் என் கண்ணுளானே கைலாயத்து உச்சியுள்ளான் காலத்தியான் அவன் என் கண்ணுளானே ஏ ஏ ஏ ஏ கைலாயத்து உச்சியுள்ளான் காலத்தியான் அவன் என் கண்ணுளானே அவன் என் கண்ணுளானே கைலாயத்து உச்சியுள்ளான் காலத்தியான் அவன் என் கண்ணுளானே அவன் என் கண்ணுளானே ஏ